Hey everyone, it's Jonathan here, and today we're going to be reviewing Zilant, an MMORPG for iOS and Android mobile platforms. In this video, we're going to take a look at the gameplay, the story, the controls, the graphics, and the sound in the game. I will rate each section and provide an overall score at the end of the review. With that said, let's dig in. Zilant features a standard assortment of class types to choose from. There is a Dragon Rider, who acts as a traditional warrior. There is a Mage class, called Prophet, which comes in both the male and female variations. There's also a Clerical class called Oracle, and then last there is the Archer, which also comes in both male and female variations. I was a little annoyed that the Dragon Rider and the Oracle classes don't both come in male and female. Instead, they chose to kind of stick the Warrior class with the male and the Clerical class as a female, which is, I wish that they would just make all of the classes have both male and female variations. Zilant engages the player primarily through NPC assigned quests. The quests vary in tasks, but they're pretty typical of an MMORPG. You'll need to go find another NPC in chat, hunt and kill a specific number of monsters, or go and just collect resources of some kind. There's nothing earth-shattering about the questing system, which I guess isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you are a fan of traditional MMORPG questing systems, then you won't have really any complaints with how Zilant handles quests here. Game features are woven into the quest system as well, which made discovering new things a little bit easier. The player is gradually introduced to new concepts such as runes, socketing, and polishing. They're guided through this usage of these things by the quest system, which is a nice touch, but unfortunately it just shows you kind of how to use it, and it doesn't really explain why those features exist and what benefits you get by actually learning and doing those specific features. The player is kind of just left to figuring it out on their own, which made for a very confusing experience. Zilant also includes two different modes of transportation, which I found to be a little confusing. You may fly with wings that are equipped to your character, or you can ride a mount. The flying animations I found to be pretty jarring, so I typically just stuck with my mount. The wings for your character that you are given, they look really cool, and it was pretty neat to fly, but nothing explained why you would use the wings over the mounts, and so I just stuck with the mount. Questing is done using an auto-routing feature. In order to accept a quest, you just touch the quest. Don't really like fighting the monsters? Touch the quest. Not sure where the NPC is at? Touch the quest. Don't know where the resource is at the harvest? Touch the quest. You get the idea. The game will play itself for you, which is okay, I guess, for the first hour or so, but it quickly kind of became boring. There's very little actual gameplay for the player to engage with, and with Zilant handling all of the questing via the auto-routing system for you, it left me with very little to do but babysit the quest system, which quickly got boring. The app also goes out of its way to try and sell you on their gem system. There are half dozen ways to buy content in the game, and all half dozen are smeared across a bunch of different screens, which makes it really confusing. It wouldn't be so bad if there was a central store for all of the in-app purchases. But there's not. Instead, it's smeared all over and is really convoluted, and I wasn't able to figure out where I needed to go to purchase things like accessories or new skins and things of that nature. So in the end, I ended up just giving up on purchasing gems and played the game as is. In the end, I give the gameplay for Zilant a solid C. One might forgive the game for being an autopilot driven game with no real gameplay if the game had an engaging story. Something to keep coming back to. Something that made the autopilot feel more like a visual novel. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The story in Zilant felt like an afterthought during my time with it. The more I played, the more I became convinced there wasn't actually any kind of a main story. In the beginning, it sounded like the goal was to track down and fight a dragon. That was brought up in a few of the beginning quests, and then ultimately kind of disappeared, and I didn't hear about it for a very long time. By the time I had hit level 30, I had become confused on what my character was actually supposed to be doing at this point in the story. Moving from one quest to another is weird. Most of the time there isn't really a story-driven transition from one major act in the storyline to another. It felt like my character was just being pulled into a scenario that aligned with whomever he or she needed to talk to next. The quests would deliver a storyline out of thin air that didn't align with what the previous storyline you were working on, and that pattern continued more or less with every quest, making the story feel completely disconnected. It was as if the overarching mission for the game was non-existent and the story was there just as filler for the game itself. The plot lines in Zilant are a mess. At one point, I helped an orc find an egg so that he can cook it. Before he could cook it though, he needed some spices, so I had to go and find the spices. Off I went to find the spices, and the quest took me to a new NPC just outside of where the orc was sitting. That NPC knew about the eggs, and they told me that they were her eggs. They also told me that the orc stole her eggs. This led me to a fight with the same orc that I had started a quest for. The thing that bothered me was, how did this NPC know that I had even talked to the orc about the eggs? And how did the orc know that I talked to the girl about him stealing the eggs? It didn't make any sense. I left the orc to go find spices, and I came back and did a battle with him. The story didn't explain anything really well, and it was just kind of a mess all over the place. I give the story for Zilant a solid D. The controls work pretty decently as you play. I never had an issue with the camera or character movement in the game. The need for controls is very limited, with the majority of the game being on autopilot. Having said that though, I did find the controls to work really well for the most part when I did need to use them. I am not a big fan of on-screen virtual joysticks. A lot of the implementations that I've seen of this style of input use a fixed location, such as the lower left-hand corner of the screen. If your finger leaves the virtual stick, then you rotate the camera, which is incredibly frustrating because you end up rotating the camera accidentally because you didn't realize that your finger slid off the joystick. Some games place the virtual stick wherever you place your finger on the screen, which I have found to be very annoying as well. When you want to move the character, you end up panning the camera because you placed your finger in a camera region and not in a region that will drop the dynamic virtual stick. Fortunately, Zilant doesn't do either of these completely. Instead, they have a fixed virtual stick in the lower left corner like most other games. However, when you walk around, the player follows the direction that your finger traces along the screen. If you leave the virtual stick, the character keeps moving in the direction your finger is traveling. Input doesn't stop. I really appreciated this setup, which makes using a virtual stick a little bit less painful. I am disappointed that they didn't support straight touch, letting me move by tapping on the ground. In a big open world game such as an MMO, I really prefer tap to walk. It just makes things a little bit more straightforward, and it removes unnecessary clutter on the screen by not having the virtual joystick. Overall though, I'll give Zilant a grade of B for its controls because they do actually work out pretty well. I was really impressed initially with Zilant and its graphics. The character models are really nice and the environments are filled out pretty well. I've always been a fan of this specific artistic style of an MMO. It reminds me of the older Perfect World games that I used to play growing up. My screen capture doesn't really do the game justice when it comes to render quality. The video capture makes the game look very soft and blurry, which is the complete opposite when I play it on my iPhone XS Max. The rendering is crisp and vibrant. The graphics in this game are one of its strongest components. The animation in the game, though, doesn't shine as much as the rendering or the character modeling. While the individual animations themselves are pretty good, transitioning between animations is pretty tough. When you transition to a mount or to flight mode, it's really jarring and sudden. As you walk around, the environment tends to pop in and pop out. I prefer the fog of war approach where content is loaded in before it starts becoming visible. Popping new content into view is a little annoying. I give the graphics a grade of B. There are some good things and there are some bad things about the audio for Zilant. Let's start with the bad first. Spoken dialogue is never in sync with the written dialogue during NPC interactions. I know this is becoming more and more common in MMORPGs, and in some cases, games outside of the genre altogether. But I'm not a fan of it, and probably never will be.
The expedition force was defeated, just as your dream foretold. But I am not giving up yet.
If you're going to narrate something, then it should match what the dialogue on the screen shows. The voice acting itself leaves a lot to be desired as well. The same voice actors are used over and over and over and over, which takes away from the individuality of the characters.
Sorry, did I wake you? Maybe having Dragon Envoy blood is the greatest misfortune in the world.
Every time I speak to an NPC and I hear the same actor speaking, it feels like I'm talking to the same NPC every single time, when I'm not. The good news though is that the music really comes in great. I enjoyed the music so well in this game that I actually tracked down a playlist on YouTube and have listened to it multiple times. I really like this specific style of music in MMOs. It adds to the fantasy feel of the game. If music was its own category, Zilant would get a strong A from me on it. As it is shared with all the audio in the game though, including the voice acting, I'm going to have to give the sound category a grade of B instead. Overall, Zilant had the potential to be a decent MMORPG. If the story had been better, it could have made up for the other shortcomings in the gameplay and in the controls. A solid story would have helped make the otherwise non-engaging game somewhat enjoyable to at least watch. Unfortunately, that was the weakest category I reviewed and it hurts the overall score. Zilant is given an overall grade of C. I hope you all enjoyed watching this review. If you have a specific game you would like me to review, let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe for future game reviews, and I will see you all next time.